Peace, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Sorry for a little bit of delays. Just getting the Zoom ready to go. But while you join, just drop your name and where you're coming from in the chat, please. I already see St. Louis checking in. Good to see you, Brother Siraj. See Indiana in the building. Des Moines, Iowa, and Providence, Rhode Island. Shout out. LA. All right, we're gonna let people in. We know it's getting a little past 8, so we want to get started as soon as possible. Oh, wow. All right. Y'all flooding the chat now. I see shout out Columbus. We got Bogota, Colombia, more LA in the building, Chicago.
Bogota in the house.
Yeah, people are here. Who y'all here is my co-chair. Lorick from Black Men Build Miami. I am the co-chair of political education at our local hub. Another person you hear is St. James, who's going to be working with us tonight. St. James is my co-chair. St. James, introduce yourself.
Peace, y'all. St. James in Miami. BMB Political Education National Committee. Also with the Miami Hub. Y'all check us out, 305 Miami all day. Also labor organizer. Happy to be here with y'all today.
Peace, everyone. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Brenda, if you want to pull it up. Oh, it's already on the screen. Cool. Brenda, whenever you're ready. Yep. All right, y'all. So, peace, welcome. I'm gonna just go through the agenda real quick so you can know what you're in for tonight. If you don't have some water with you, get ready, get situated, get comfortable, stretch. We're gonna get into it. It's gonna be a good time. So we always get grounded with the same thing, which is our values. And what we're here for, we're here to build power. So we want to define what that is. So we're all operating on the same definition. We want to frame this conversation tonight into two types of thought. We really want y'all to understand these types of thought and apply them to this conversation we're about to have. So we're going to talk about Black conservative and Black radical thought. What are the characteristics of those things? We're going to talk about financial literacy, of course, the main event, the reason you're here. It's overview, a little bit of history. We're going to talk about the real source of Black power, materially, historically, in our societies across the diaspora. Where does Black power come from? And we're going to sort through some of the mythology around Black power, specifically around Black economic power. And to do that, we're joined by none other than Dr. Jared Ball and future Dr. Erika Brown of I Mix What I Like and Brokish, which you can find on Black Liberation Media. We're going to close, and then today, if you feel so inclined, we're going to have office hours. So after this session ends, I'm going to cut off the recording, stick around and talk for 30 minutes or so if you want to keep sharing information or digging in a little more. Next slide, please. So we always start with our values pledge. First and foremost, it's very important. We are critical thinkers. Second, we are curious about this moment. Third, we are coming together to take an active and responsible role in freeing our communities. We are transforming to meet the moment. And fifth, we are bonded with Black women and all Black people in the fight for true freedom, with one special exception that we'll definitely get into tonight, which is that Black people who choose to fight for the enemy or use our struggle for personal or financial benefit need not apply to our organization. And if you rock with that, you can rock with us. Next slide, please. So if you've been here before, you're not confused about what we do. We're here to build power, and we want to make sure we have a shared definition. So can I have two people raise their hands to come off mute real quick and define power? Brandon, if you could click on this slide one more time. There we go. Two people, want to see some raised hands. In the audience, if you feel comfortable coming off mute to read these real quick. I see one raised hand. Having trouble finding it though. I don't know why I can't see it.
I got her. So
Thank
first is Parnia, second is Darrell.
I
I'm
got
passing it to Kofi because he's literally raising his hand in front of the camera.
it. Okay, I saw two. Dio, I heard you. Can you make me
Yeah, so
host?
Kofi, and then Darrell.
Yeah, and I think I can't see it because I'm not host. If you could change that. Kofi, first quote, please.
The first quote is by Dr. Martin Luther King, and that is, "Now power properly understood is nothing but the ability to achieve purpose. It is the strength required to bring about social, political, and economic change." And that was quoted from Dr. King's "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?"
Fantastic. Last book by Dr. King, very important to understand his political
Yes.
thought. Highly recommend it. Next. Oh, no. Next, person reading.
Blessings. Thank you very much. Second quote, Huey P. Newton, Black Capitalism Reanalyzed, Part 1, 1971. To us, power is, first of all, the ability to define phenomena, and secondly, the ability to make these phenomena act in a desired manner.
Very
Thank you.
important. Thank you for reading that. So we want to keep moving. Again, now that we understand what we're here to build. Next slide, please. And St. James, go ahead and introduce what we're looking at here.
So to get us grounded here, this is an interview with Martin Luther King of just a year before he was assassinated. This is a very long interview. I implore y'all to go to YouTube, watch the entire 20-minute interview. In this interview is one of my favorite quotes from MLK where he says, "I fear I may have integrated my people into a burning house." But this quote here that we fast forwarded pertains to our conversation tonight on financial literacy. So y'all check it out, give it a listen.
Is that America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. But it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless. Is that America freed the slaves in 19...
So that was an interview by NBC. Most of y'all came here because y'all saw the post on the flyer. We had a quote from CNBC, big financial news network, that said, teaching black kids financial literacy just might bridge the wealth gap, right? That's what CNBC is telling us, right? But here go Martin Luther King Jr. telling us something completely different here on the exact same news network. So with that, we can move on.
Thank you.
Next slide, please.
So we come here to spar, and that is what we want to do today. Our learning objectives are to study the origins and impact of financial literacy. We want to practice distinguishing between conservative and radical thought. We want to assess some popular mythology and propaganda about the Black economic condition. And if you've been attending previous Theory Thursdays, we want to repeat our analysis of the U.S. political economy from previous sessions. So please check out earlier work so you can have a foundation that we're going to keep building on. Next slide, please. We want to open it up with a discussion, just a conversation on what we're saying. We come together. It's not just us talking from on high. We're just talking from our perspectives on the ground. So what are the major issues impacting our communities today? Can you click one more time, Brent? We want to take a moment.
Let's get some hands up.
Yep. pressing challenges in our neighborhoods and community? Hands up, please. Come off mute, feel comfortable. We're here to share. I see Anthony's hand already in the air. Anthony, get us started, while some other people might raise their hands. What are you seeing in your community as the most pressing issue right now?
Yeah, good evening, brothers. Glad to see you hailing out of Virginia, Hampton Roads, Virginia. I think a pressing issue in our community today is individualism.
Individualism, okay. Individualism is an issue.
Love it. Individualism. Absolutely.
James, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm thinking housing and food insecurity.
Housing and food insecurity, that comes up a lot. Again, share in the chat as well. You don't have to come off mute, but let me see if y'all are seeing those issues as well. Housing,
Benign neglect.
benign neglect. I see some more hands. So let me hear from Manuel and Lamar. What are y'all seeing as some issues in your community right now?
Peace, yo. I would say an example of something happening in the community is like our lack of owning institutions. Peace to Anthony from the 757 Hampton Roads. In terms as to how like elitist institutions and how we utilize them for community, I feel like there's a great shift between those two.
Not owning and controlling the institutions in our community. Absolutely. We've been talking about Malcolm celebrating this year. Please check out what we talked about, the plan for addressing that kind of issue. I see redlining and lack of educational resources. Absolutely. Brent, go ahead and click this slide. See, we know these issues, and these issues unite us with people around the world because we hear them everywhere. There's oppression, and that is we want housing, we want clean water, public transportation, access to healthy foods, access to open spaces, and then control of the institutions in our community, control of police that are still brutalizing and killing us every day. So these are the issues. And so anyone who's talking about the Black community, trying to advance the Black community, solve issues in the Black community, must be trying to solve these issues. And that's what we want to think about today. So if you're saying you want to advance the conditions of the Black community, you want to help the Black community, you're trying to solve a water crisis. You're trying to get us access to healthy food. You're trying to get us ownership and control of the institutions in our neighborhood. Next slide, please.
And some of the awesome ones I see in the chat here: psychological warfare, we ain't got no land, lack of equitable access to resources, health and wellness, all of that, exactly what we're fighting for.
You can go back one. Well, you can leave them. Yes, it's cool now, right? It's good. So we tonight want to have a foundational framework here. And so we want y'all to understand different modes of thought. Again, Black people are recognizing these problems. And we're all trying to come up with solutions to these problems, assuming that we actually care about our people. So we're going to come from that understanding that we do care about our people, and we're trying to solve these problems. And there have been throughout history, unless you think you're unique and cut off from everybody else, different people attempting to solve these problems. We saw one earlier, Dr. King. Here we see Booker T. Washington. And what we want to understand is that these approaches can fall under umbrellas of thought, of ways of approaching and solving a problem with methods. And so one tradition is the Black conservative tradition. It says, cast down your bucket where you are. This is what Booker T. Washington stated to Black people. Now, what's interesting about that speech, he also told white people to cast down their bucket where they are because Black people have contributed to building this great American country, and they can't deny that. And so it was a very interesting approach. But when he's telling us to cast down our buckets where we are, it's because he is telling us to get these skills, for example, these trade skills, industrial skills. And so Booker T. Washington was formerly enslaved. Very important to understanding this man. He was the leader of the Tuskegee Institute, born 1856, and died relatively young in his 50s in 1915. And he was an educator, orator, and philanthropist. That is the Black conservative tradition, a very good representative, a lot of the forefather to the current Black conservatives we see in our community. If you click Brent, I want to introduce an example of a Black radical, this idea of Black radical thoughts. And so while you have a quote from Booker T. Washington saying, cast down your bucket where you are, Hubert Harrison is someone who described himself as the untamed, untamable African. These are contemporaries. He's a little younger, born 1883, and tragically died a little younger as well, 1927. He was the founder of the Liberty League and New Negro movement. He was a scholar, a labor organizer, an educator, an orator, and journalist. This was somebody who was extremely talented, a scholar ahead of his time, ahead of his peers, and one we don't hear much about. Now, why? If you can click, Brent. We want to understand, for the purposes of this presentation, the difference between Black conservative and Black radical thought. Black conservative thought puts the emphasis on the how. It's trying to survive systems as they are and accepting their terms and conditions as natural and fair. It's about improving one's individual position by climbing the socioeconomic ladder and then advocating that approach for the collective. That is the Black conservative tradition. The Black radical tradition puts the emphasis on why. It doesn't say that we exclude how, it just puts the emphasis on why. And it says, studying how the system came to be, learning its mechanics, and challenging its terms and conditions as unfair and inhumane is how we should approach this. It's about improving the collective's position by organizing to force changes to the socioeconomic system. And so we want to, again, represent these two differences between Black radical and Black conservative thought. But if you wanted to summarize them, it could be summarized right here. Black radical thought emphasizes the why while teaching the how. Black conservative thought emphasizes the how while suppressing the why. Next slide, please. It can also be summarized with this right here. The goal is not just to understand the world, but to change it. That would be another difference between Black conservative and Black radical thought. We want to be really clear here on what we are saying and what we aren't saying. And so I'm going to ask my comrade Siraj if he could come off mute and highlight what we are saying here. And I'm going to ask someone else to talk about what we are not saying. So Siraj, if you're here, please come off mute. Let us know what we are saying at Black Men Build about financial literacy. And then
Solid, I got you. Yeah, coming
Go
in
ahead.
10, 4, 3, 2, 1. What are we saying? No amount of budgeting, saving, and investment will address the most pressing issues in our community. I'll say it one more time. There is no amount of budgeting, saving, and investment that will address the most pressing issues in our community.
Keep going. Yeah.
The deck is stacked, like relying on a casino to pay your rent. No good on that. Against poor and working class people when it comes to stocks, real estate, and entrepreneurship. We need to build power and address the political situation and economic systems that leaves the rich and the few in control of the many.
Thank you very much. So be very clear on what we're trying to say tonight. Now, can someone, so actually St. James, go ahead. Tell us what we are not saying tonight about financial literacy.
All right. So don't get it twisted, y'all. What we are not saying is that you should not learn to budget, save, and be financially responsible. You'd be fucking yourself up there. Next one. What we are not saying, we ain't saying your friend's cousins, what's his name, boo-boo down the block did not make a lot of money investing in crypto and buying real estate. We don't doubt that y'all got some hustling skills and y'all could come up doing this shit. That ain't what we talking about. Moving on. And we are not saying that you do not need money or resources to carry out our work or simply to live our lives. So yeah, make sure to donate to BNB and make sure you keep supporting your own damn self because we want you alive and we're living for this revolution.
Very good. Again, we are okay teaching the how, but what we want to talk about is that how is useless without the why, without understanding the context behind the things that you're learning. Next slide, please. So we're going to do a little exercise here.
Now we're getting fun.
Okay. You hear that, Brother St. James? St. James is going to be the devil on your shoulder. Okay. Not the evil, but the one who's telling you what you really already know. Okay. And I'm going to be the one telling you the basic tenets of financial literacy as you understand them. Follow the rules, play the game, win the prize. Next slide, please. All right. So we're going to talk about some basic tenets of financial literacy, just so we can have some clear definitions here. One of them is budgeting. Budgeting is just how you create a plan for how you're going to spend your money. And you create the spending plan and you stick to it with a little bit of self-control. Anybody can learn how to budget, and that is going to help us close the wealth divide. Right, St. James?
No, not really. Let's keep it real here, okay? Do y'all really need to learn how to budget? To keep it real, okay? Nobody knows how to budget like poor people, okay? I know personally, poor people, we know how to make $20 stretch for a week to buy enough food, okay? We have to budget. Ain't no other option to budget. Now, rich people, they don't have to budget. It's like that old saying goes, if you got to ask how much it costs, you can't afford it. That's how rich people think. Rich people do not budget. Poor people have no choice but to budget. It does nothing for us but allows us to live for the next day. So, moving on.
Credit and debt in the US are two important things. Credit's the process of borrowing money or accessing goods and services, and you're going to promise to repay it later, usually with interest. And then credit is also a promise to each person based on their credit history. Debt is the money you owe, and that you got to pay somebody back. And if you're not aware of your credit and your debt, I mean, you're not going to build any kind of business or assets in the United States. You're messing yourself up. It's your fault. Got to learn.
Yeah. That makes sense. But you know what? There's plenty of rich people, billionaires out there, hella in debt. Number one. Number two, absolutely. Credit and debt is absolutely important. You got credit scores. We're going to get into that. FICO scores, lending and mortgages. You need your credit scores to be good, right? But just so y'all know, what, say, Freddie and Fannie Mae used credit scores was to target poor people so that they can sell them subprime mortgages, which caused a huge financial market to crash. Damn near the whole global financial market was damn near about to crash. If you look at FICO scores right now, they're finally being competed against. You got Vantage Score, you got all these other finally competitors coming up. Credit scores only started in the 1980s. Our parents remember a time when credit scores did not exist.
Spoiling,
My
brother.
bad. I'm going too fast. Right, next, my bad. All right.
We're gonna keep it moving. So, what about earning? Well, obviously, you have to know what kind of lifestyle you lead. Don't let lifestyle creep catch you. You got to know how to invest, your career path, things like entrepreneurship. You have to increase your revenue streams. Earning is very important to understanding how this financial system works.
You know what? On that one, sir, I will agree. On earning, I will agree on the financial literacy part. You know why? Because you should absolutely focus on your paycheck and demand a better living wage. That's what it's all about. Because ain't no way you can budget, ain't no way you can save if you're living paycheck to paycheck. Paycheck to paycheck means after you pay all your bills, after you take care of your necessities, you have nothing left over. So instead of trying to find a better job, instead of trying to have shuffle 2, 3, 4 jobs, 2, 3, 4 hustles, go to your boss, organize with your coworkers, and demand a better living wage. Demand better earning. With this, we definitely agree. That way we can start talking about labor and unions. But that's what it's all about, all right, y'all? These corporations are taking all the profits and making sure to keep our wages low. We'll get into that eventually. But earning, absolutely. Let's make sure to keep our earnings up by demanding we get paid our due.
I was just talking about starting a business, brother. Saving and
Oh,
investing
my bad, dog.
in assets, retirement and estate planning. So for the sake of time, we're going to keep moving forward with this. But retirement and estate planning, I want to know what to do if I, have to inherit a home, if I'm fortunate enough to inherit a home from my parents, right? I don't want the government to take that from me. And what about my retirement? What am I going to do with my money? I have to figure out the stock market so my 401k looks right. Okay. So it's very important to estate plan. Black people lose our land too much. We lose our homes too much because we don't know the game. So we gotta learn how to estate plan.
So who exactly are we protecting our assets from? If our assets are our home, who has the power to take our home from us? Is it the homie down the street? It's the bank. That's who we have to protect our assets from. Repo man coming to take your car because you missed the payment. That's who we have to protect our assets from. Okay? Retirement and estate planning. Did y'all see the big, beautiful bill that just passed? Ain't gonna be no Social Security for y'all by the time we get to that age. So protecting your assets, retirement and estate planning, absolutely all requires actual power. Not individual power, but community power. If we want to protect our assets, we got to get rid of all those payday loans out of our neighborhoods. Fact of the matter is, there's more payday loans in Black communities than there are Burger Kings and McDonald's. Did you know that? We got to get rid of all these predatory financial institutions that keep preying on our people. That's how we protect our assets.
Absolutely. And on that, we agree. That being said, retirement, estate planning, these are important things so we can learn some of those technical skills. And that's what our people have organized for. So we need legal clinics, for example, to help people not get robbed. All of that, though, requires more organization. So on that, we agree. Next slide, please. So what we want to do is just do a breakdown of financial literacy, a little piece by piece. Now, this isn't going to be exhaustive, but we do want to show you all some trends. Again, yes, this will be uploaded to YouTube once we are done. So that's why these slides, we're trying to make them nice and neat. If you want to pause and go back and read each of these, feel free. 1900 to 1970. So from thrift to literacy, it's important to know early 20th century programs weren't calling it financial literacy. It used to be called thrift, something that Booker T. Washington advocated for, consumer education, and household finance. Household finance, a lot more of an accurate description than financial literacy. And it said that money management is more of a life skill. But by the 80s, we get a little bit of a shift here. Now, it's important. One of the first financial literacy acts we see is the 1914 Smith-Lever Act. St. James, did you want to say a little bit about that briefly? Because we got to keep it moving. You're muted, bud. You're muted right now. Can't hear you. So I'm going to keep it moving. But the 1914 Smith-Lever Act, it's important because it was a response to labor uprisings. In fact, this idea of constantly introducing financial literacy seems to coincide very often with what St. James said, people demanding a better wage. I know it's not that you need more money, you just got to figure out how to use the little money you have. Why literacy? This is a term that suggests personal responsibility, and it ignores racist policies like land theft and redlining that block wealth building for Black and Native communities. Literacy programs rarely address racist and capitalist policy. And at the end of the day, rather than self-determination, like we said earlier, community control, they encourage assimilation, not us choosing our own destiny, us getting with the program. Next. Then we have neoliberalism 101. Just so you understand, it's this my ideology that says the free market is the ultimate public good. It calls for replacing public safety nets like pension and welfare with private responsibility. Things like 401ks being invested in the stock market and student loans. In the free market, financial literacy becomes a solution to problems caused by deregulation and Wall Street. Next slide. So there's this shift again. Finance, household finance, which still was some sort of way to teach rural people, workers, Africans in America how to deal with the financial system. So again, it was already a labor response, but now they're being even more explicit with how they frame it as something you are responsible for figuring out. 21st century, we have the capitalist crisis, one of the biggest destroyers of Black wealth. Probably the biggest in this century was the 2008 housing market crash, at least in the US. Black wealth dropped 53%. Again, no matter how literate you are, you can't deal with predatory banking practices, housing policies, and more. Things like student debt, which came into place right after we get access to education through our freedom struggle, right? Today's $1.7 trillion crisis proves budgeting can't fix exploitative systems. As Dr. King said, or was it no, I got to check on that. I'm gonna ask Jared on this one. But somebody says we'll integrate and then they'll raise the price of the burgers, right? So you integrate the lunch counter and then they raise the price of the burgers. Schools and self-help. Now it's all over the place. 25 states, might be even more by 2023, teach financial literacy. And we are at this weaponized poison. Ben Carson, gifted hands will pay for its crimes, but also rich dad, poor dad, think and grow rich, intelligent investor. These things are immediately getting pumped into public schools. Ignoring soaring rents and stagnant wages again since the 1970s. There's a racial wealth divide. Many of our people are aware of this and trying to raise awareness about it, but the median Black household wealth is 1/6 that of white wealth. At this rate, Black net wealth could hit zero by 2050. And we have some studies on that. We have all of our sources if you're interested. And rent eats 40 or more % of Black income. Moving on. Of course, we have
let me jump in before we go to the next slide.
Go ahead. Close us out on what the future might lead for us with Bitcoin and my crypto.
Okay. Just as far as the crypto goes, it's what's being touted is that it's unregulated currency. I think the important thing for us is that it's digital currency. It's unregulated, which means it's good for unethical business people, bad for the rest of us, right? Another thing that's very important to understand about cryptocurrency is that you do need a smartphone and you do need internet access. 60% of the world is on smartphones, which means 40% of the world, the global south, do not have smartphones and do not have good internet connection, which means this is money that is literally inaccessible to the poor. Countries like El Salvador that just made their entire country's official currency digital, Bitcoin, just made sure that people who are poor now have zero money. You were already poor, now you have no money. Your physical money is worth nothing. The other thing I wanted to point out is with the books on the screen, Rich Dad Poor Dad. He likes to brag about how he's $1 billion in debt, talking about debt. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It was one of my favorite books growing up. I ain't gonna lie, I was a hustler from the streets trying to come up. Come to find out, Napoleon Hill is a scam artist. He claimed to meet all these people like Dale Carnegie. He never did. He was lying. He was full of shit. This book is a lie. If not for his wife helping him to hustle this book, we'd never know about it. And that 1914 Smith and Lever Act, if I can say a quick word on that. What else happened in 1914? You mentioned the big labor movement.
James, brother man. We got time.
All right, we can move on. Go ahead.
All right, moving on. Next slide. We're gonna get there. I know. We got a lot to debunk, but we want to just deal with some of the basics, right? So if you have financial literacy, again, we're okay with the how. You just got to know why. So you want to learn about credit scores. Here's how traditional financial literacy might look. You can click a few times, Brent, on this one. Just credit scores are a common, number. Does your ability to repay debt? It's on a scale, 300 to 850. How do you improve it? Pay your bills on time, keep your accounts open, utilization ratio low. All of these things are what you would get in a typical financial literacy class. And again, on their own, they just explain the mechanisms of the system as it exists. We aren't saying you don't learn that. What we want to point out is, next slide, please. Our historical materialists, a Black radical method for looking at credit scores. How could we actually teach a class about credit scores that, yes, tells people the basics for surviving this capitalist system, but also explains things like this credit score hasn't existed forever. In fact, it's only been around for a few decades. It was a tool created by lenders in the 50s and 80s to quantify trustworthiness. Where did these objective algorithms it uses come from? Well, it was actually built on red lighting data. When wages are stagnating, you introduce credit to discipline the poor and stimulate consumption without, what St. James said earlier, raising incomes. Where are these metrics coming from? Who decides what trust looks like? Keep going. Again, barriers, keep going. And ideology, what is the point of credit? What is it for? It's to mask these conditions, not raise your income, and it is to economically surveil and control you. Now you have a number that says how trustworthy you are. And again, this number hasn't existed forever. Does that mean it was less racist before? No. Before credit scores, lending was based on personal relationships, reputation, and race. But the algorithm is designed to mask that racism. So the same racist data that came from this earlier practice was then brought into the algorithm where we get credit scores now. So when you are learning about credit scores, this is what you need to know. We want to, again, just highlight situations where we are okay with Black business in the sense that people are going to continue trying it because our people are enterprises. As St. James said, we're hustlers. We know how to do this, and we've been here for a very long time. But we haven't failed. It's not that we don't know this. It's that there are structural barriers in place, as Dr. King began with. And so we want to talk about this story in Dallas that we look into, where Wells Fargo and other banks are refusing loans. Consider the story of Robert Petrie. He was a longtime anchor they interviewed for The Divided City, talking about racial inequities. He was trying to get bank loans and he could not in his city of Dallas. He had to go to Houston. In this community, it's an economic embargo. Notice the language. We've been talking about Malcolm all year. It's warfare. It's economic warfare against your people. It's not that you don't know how to start a business. It's that there are systemic barriers in place that will limit your business. Moving on. Please check out that story. Again, we'll drop these links. One really important thing. So the first thing is thinking about how the conservative thinks versus the radical in understanding these topics. We also want to talk about how we talk about the Black experience. Very often we're presented with Black rich people, Black elites as representatives for all of Black people. Even if they come from our communities, these are people who are at present rich, wealthy, powerful, and often quite removed. So what we want to focus on is something called the modal Black experience. If you remember back in math class, mean, median, mode, modes that most common. These are the social relations most frequently experienced by Afro-descendant people in the U.S. empire. You can use this anywhere though. It's the core culture and social consciousness created by the working class Black majority. Again, this is where culture comes from in our community. It's very helpful to look at the modal Black experience across periods to understand what was it most Black people were doing, what was our economic condition, when we're living in the United States. So, slave period 1526, first Africans are brought to Spanish Florida through 1865. Chattel slavery, no wages. We're in the Black Belt South. We have plantation housing, and there is a 95+% Black poverty rate. Was the majority of our history. So let's just start there. Moving on. What's really interesting is really hard to find pictures back and forth between these two of Africans in chattel slavery and cotton plantations versus sharecropping, what's called slavery by another name. In fact, a lot of pictures people think they're using that are of chattel slavery are actually of sharecroppers. And so this image right here, which some folks might think is of chattel slavery, is of that rural period from 1865 to 1960, where the majority of us, again, we're talking about the most common experience, which your grandmama probably was going through. Sharecropping and domestic labor, towns with shotgun houses and shacks, and a 60 to 90% poverty rate. The majority of our people up until 1960 were in poverty. Moving on. Well, again, we weren't stagnant, right? We fought at every single stage, and so we transitioned these periods. But what's happening during the urban period, where there's the so-called Great Migration, we're being terrorized and our land's being stolen? Well, we're going to industrial work. We're doing military service, but each time we're last hired, first fired. We're not giving those benefits. We're not giving access to the American dream, as King calls it, the American nightmare. So most of us are still working agricultural work, but we also got wage work in industry, military service, domestic work, a lot of the dirty jobs, and still at a 60% poverty rate. So the majority of Black people are poor. This is through no fault of our own, just statistically true. Now, what is happening? Well, at each stage, we're in the productive forces, right? If you remember our previous Theory Thursday, the largest asset the U.S. had before the Civil War was enslaved Africans in the Cotton Kingdom. So we're producing the things that the U.S. is using to establish its wealth. But what is happening in what people might call the modern period or the digital period, or what we call Black faces in high places, the neo-colonial period, which is 1970 to present. After Black Power, COINTELPRO, a lot of the repression, check those Theory Thursdays out. Well, a lot of us are in the service industry now. A lot of us have federal employment thanks to civil rights struggles, which is constantly under attack with things like anti-affirmative action, anti-DEI laws. We have way more debt and credit than before, unleashing debt onto us. Limited professional advancement opportunities only for elite members of our community, whether that's athletically, whether that's artistically, or whether that's academically. And again, doesn't mean that you were the best at those things, just that you had access. You were lucky to be born in a wealthy family. Mass incarceration was then, of course, implemented, and it was throughout these periods always a strategy to contain our people, to reproduce second-class citizenship. So civil rights movement passes. How do we do this again? Mass incarceration. It's pretty obvious. 20% poverty rate. Again, we can't compare these eras like everything's the same, but what's interesting is Black wealth is declining in the era of mass incarceration, surveillance, and debt. So even though we're looking at our people throughout these periods of poverty, right now we're dealing with a decline in Black wealth, and that's really important. Moving on. So again, remember the modal experience is the most common. So looking at these most common experiences, we want to ask, where does our power as Black and African people come from historically? If we focus on things like spending, buying power, starting businesses, a lot of those are consumer side after the products have been created. But when we're thinking about our history, next slide, please, Black and African people's power historically comes from labor. And so before I transition to the Q&A, just want to ask some people some questions about this slide. What are you seeing here? What are some of the things that you observe on this slide, which is about Black labor and all of these historical things? I want to see some
Hands up, y'all.
hands up. Come off mute. What do we notice about labor here?
It's all organized.
The labor is all organized. Thank you very, very much. Calvin and Kamal. Calvin first, Kamal. What do you notice about this slide?
Definitely feel like we had a stronger sense of community back then. And the second thought that come to mind is, let's say the embracement or the development of AI is not coincidental, especially with weapons shared.
Right. So the productive, like I said, we're a service economy now where we're McDonald's workers, we're Amazon drivers, we're working in service, right? A lot of times, even in the government. Next, Calvin. I want to hear Calvin. Oh, wait, I kind of just heard from you. Sorry, Kamal. I want to hear from you. And then Danelli, and then we got to move on. So what are you observing on this slide right here?
Just the importance of capturing these moments, like thinking about the sanitation workers and thinking about how they knew that them standing in uniformity, but actually making sure that they archive this moment for us to be able to study it. It's good for us to be able to look back because it exists. So just marveling at that.
And so I Am a Man, that's Dr. King's work with the Memphis sanitation workers. Again, this war on labor is what King was trying to fight in the war on poverty. And then Danelli, last piece of input before we bring on our guests.
Peace, brother. It's Donnelly. Appreciate you.
Sorry, Donnelly.
It's all good. Yeah, I'm part of UAW myself, and I couldn't help but notice how black it was. It is not black anymore. I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, we have some other content around Black labor history, very important to notice. But even then, there's been a decline in labor and union participation in general. But if you look at that table there, Black people are still the most unionized, women, men, metro area, wherever you are. Black people, union work is Black. And yet again, it is not something we hear often discussed. Last piece here, Black Reconstruction. Again, how do Black people have power? How do we end slavery? We are the engine. We are the asset. We are capital and labor. And so Du Bois frames the Civil War as a general strike. Why? Because Black people stopped working, literally pulled their labor away from the empire and started fighting. So where does Black power come from historically? It is not our consumption. It is not our ability to start businesses, even if those things are important. It is our organized mass labor. Moving on. Next slide. St. James, you wanted to comment on this, and then we'll bring our guests on.
Yeah, real quick. This is a very simple graph, but after talking about the fact that our power as Black people, our power has primarily come from labor. Take a look at this graph and see what these crackers have been doing to our labor. Okay. So as corporate profits continue to go up, and I'm talking about they making billions of dollars, wages continue to go down. As a matter of fact, today, 2025, the federal minimum wage is still at $7.25. And best believe a majority of that federal workforce are Black folks. We can move on.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, moving forward, I want to introduce two of our guests today. Help us break some of this down. So the first I want to introduce is Dr. Jared Ball. Jared Ball is a professor at Morgan State University. He's also a comrade to Black Men Build. He's the author of The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power, and he is the host of I Mix What I Like on Black Liberation Media, debunking financial literacy and encouraging us to join liberation struggles today. I also want to introduce Brokish Podcast, Erika of the Brokish Podcast, which is just talking about the ways we've been bamboozled by financial literacy in this hustle culture, how we can't fix it. But Erika is also future Dr. Erika Brown and has researched this at a scholarly level to understand financial literacy and how it's hustling us. So I want to call both of them up. If you haven't checked out our social media, check out that post and see some of their greatest hits. But peace, Jared. Peace, Erika. How you doing today?
Hi, thank you for having me in this sacred space. I feel very excited to be here and appreciate the invitation.
Likewise, thank you very much. It's good to be back. Peace, everybody.
Okay, so again, I want to recommend people check out the work, check out the mass call we had with Jared, and also check out Financial Literacy's Greatest Hits. It was a fantastic interview held by Brokish Podcast. So Jared, I want to start with you, just real quick. We already saw it with this post when you say that Black people don't have any money, and we just talked about the Modal Black experience. There's this response, and it says, that's not true. We have 1.2, 1.8, $2 trillion of buying power, and we're just not using it right. We'd be the 14th largest economy in the world if we just figured out how to spend our money. Can you tell us where that myth came from and why it's a problem?
So I think, first of all, you raised a very important point. It is always good to ask, where are people getting numbers that you hear thrown around all the time? And this is a great place to start. Long story short, those numbers are, in their own words, quote, estimates and projections that have from the early 1990s come out of the Selig Center for Economic Growth, whose stated mission is to help Georgia's business community make better use of their ad revenue. So it is not a measurement of income. It is not a measurement of actual wealth. It is not a measurement of a pooled amount of resources that Black people could use however they want to improve their conditions. And then even if you want to accept the mythology, it is still at best 1/8 of all the buying power that exists. So even if you believed it, it wouldn't represent an economic or political power that is worth all the time that it gets. The reason it's become a problem, again, long story short, is that the narrative around this has been misunderstood both by people with good intent and those I would think with malintent, but all the same misunderstanding and misrepresenting this buying power as something that could actually be used to change the conditions of the Black community, when what they are reading is at best a measurement of how existing expenditure could be used to benefit those who own the economy, not a measurement of what could be redistributed throughout the community. So the perniciousness, first of all, buying power is something that is applied as a basic concept to all segments of society, all segments, from races, genders, municipalities, corporations. But when applied and targeted to Black people specifically, it takes on a very pernicious and hostile propaganda, psychological, counterinsurgent bent, which is that particularly after 1970s and Richard Nixon, it has been used to create this idea that Black capitalism is a solution and that Black poverty is the result of Black ignorance and financial illiteracy. So it's been used as a weapon to justify the existing inequality and to get Black people to not think about radical forms of organization when it comes to responding to these conditions.
That distraction away from labor again. Definitely, definitely. And so then,
So this myth of Black power, buying power, if I can ask, applies to everything, every race, every culture?
Not exactly. The reason I've called it specifically a myth of Black buying power is that when it's applied to other communities and other segments of the economy, it's done so with a little bit more accuracy and honesty because it's never associated with this long-standing hostility specific to Black people in this country to distract other communities from other forms of organization. The more I pay attention, there are some shifts in that. Latin America is getting targeted and starting more and more in a similar way. There's a little bit in the Asian community and even a little bit in the LGBTQ and actually even in the disabled community, where some of the mythology is starting to increasingly be used in a similar way. But none of those communities have the specific relationship to this country that Africans in the United States do. And therefore, again, I'm simplifying and summarizing here, but it takes on a particular hostility when put in that context. So that's why the myth of Black buying power is specific to Black people here in the United States, has a specific hostility and history. But broadly, buying power is used everywhere all the time. It's those differences that don't get explained when the discussion is targeting Black audiences, and that's why there continues to be so much intentional confusion.
Makes a lot of sense. Kind of like
The
how
material differences, understood.
Can know, how many people are gonna go to their store and have enough money to buy their products if they make the milk $6 or just whatever stuff.
And then they want to be able to say, I'm sorry, but they want to be able to say, 30% of Black Americans buy this kind of toothpaste. So that corporation that produces that toothpaste and owns the means of production for the toothpaste can then target its ad spending in that particular way. So that's really what and then the Selig Center and some misreading by design and by accident has led us to this level of confusion.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, and there's probably more history there, get that with McDonald's and its ad history within the Black community that we all grew up seeing, probably on BET and things of that nature. And speaking of these things in our community, it's like taking advantage of. Erika, you've been studying financial literacy and how that then gets packaged particularly and targeted toward Black youth. So could you talk a little bit about why that came to be, and then how come it's being so targeted, as Jared said, toward our community?
So financial literacy has a long history, right? Especially in the Black community. Even if you go back to the Freedmen's Bank, right? So we had the Freedmen's Bank where Black people were encouraged to save their money, right? So we're coming out of enslavement and we're moving into Reconstruction. It's like, come here to the Freedmen's Bank and put your money here and we're going to keep it safely and it's going to grow. And so we found from that when Black people did that, what happened is that white investors, white money came in, stole the money, destroyed the Freedmen's Bank, and also destroyed Black people's trust in financial institutions. So just a little bit of history, but I do want to point out that many people who do have a distrust in the financial system, it's historical, it's warranted, right? It didn't just come out of nowhere. So anyway, the idea of Black people saving and having money is, or saving to try to have more money is not a new idea. But I think for me, the part that starts to get interesting is financial literacy is when we go back, and you've already talked about it so eloquently, is this idea of what happened in the starting in the 70s with like the shift to neoliberalism. So I think all of us know that neoliberalism, which is this shift from what is the government doing, what is their responsibility, to what are individuals doing. But neoliberalism is always counterinsurgent. And so when you talked about a tax on labor, that is the point of neoliberalism, because then I'm not focused on community anymore. Before, in the 1970s and earlier, of course, when we were talking about labor, there were these benefits that you can certainly see and expect, right? So if you had unions backing you up, I knew I was going to have a pension, right? And so that's where you have like this defined benefit program. So I know that when I work for 30 years and I retire, I'm going to have money at the end of it. And I know how much money I'm going to have. And there's a sense of security and stability with that. But when you usher in neoliberalism and this illusion of control, we want to move you from this defined benefit to a defined contribution. And now y'all can control everything with your 401ks. Why should you trust us with your retirement when you can have the power to put this money into the stock market? You can pick where it goes. And now you can be in charge of your own destiny. And who doesn't want to be in charge of their own destiny? This is, in fact, after all, America, right? So that's what we all want. And so you have this neoliberalism coming in, and our minds are shifting in terms of, you know what? It's not a bad, like, I don't trust the government. Why would I want the same government that did all those things to me? Why would I want them to be in control? Well, then, but you have to set aside your distrust of the financial institution, because now that's what you kind of given the control over to. And so then fast forward, right? We know what happened in 2008 with the Great Recession. You talked about it. But one of the interesting things that happened with the Great Recession is that George W. Bush was like, you know what? This Great Recession really wasn't the fault of like the people, the financial institutions and the government who allowed all this deregulation so that we could have this subprime mortgage crisis that did have the ripple effect around the world. It wasn't because of them. It was because y'all don't know how to manage your money. So they started this thing called the President's Advisory Council on Financial Literacy, and they brought together people from industry, and they brought together K through 12 schools and universities, and they brought all these folks together, and they're like, you know what? We got to help these people get better with their money because they crashing the whole economic system, and we can't have this. So now you have, which you've always had vestiges of financial literacy in school. People love to say, I didn't learn about that in school. And y'all probably did. Y'all probably really did and just didn't pay attention to it. It was there. But anyway, there's now this concerted effort, right? And so you talked about states with financial literacy. Well, more than half the states have like mandated financial literacy, but all the states have financial literacy in their state standards as it relates to usually in math modules, sometimes in social studies modules, these sorts of things related to managing your money. And so now the onus is on you, the individual. Well, the problem is that Black people are community-minded people. And so inherently there is like this tension that exists with this idea of financial literacy because it forces us not to focus on the community, what the government should be doing, how we should be working collectively. It forces me to focus on my individual situation. And that is a very dangerous prospect and idea. But we've all like fallen for the okie doke, right? Because like you all talked about, you have to do the things that financial literacy tells you to do. if you want to be able to survive, you have to budget, you have to plan, you have to do all these things. So it's not bad, but it's still harmful.
Thank you. Thank you for outlining that. And you just said it has like this counterinsurgent function, and it plays on us being community minded. So I know we had Martin at the beginning. All of us have been studying and celebrating Malcolm. Jared, I wanted to ask you, how is this message at odds, right? So again, we talked about the Black conservative tradition, and you speak about that with Nixon co-opting Black power and things. How is this at odds with the Black radical way of thinking about the world that Malcolm represented?
So just quickly, you mentioned that you might ask me about it later, something about George Jackson's response to all of this. And I think that's a good way to even get to a Kingian radicalism. But George Jackson, who I think represents radicalism as well as anyone has, was really the only one to ever in real time catch the mythology of Black buying power that I've ever found, at least, in its specific form and function. So as he said in Blood in My Eyes, so what is to be done after a revolution has failed? After our enemies have created a conservative mass society based on meaningless electoral politics, spectator sports, and a 3% annual rise in purchasing power strictly regulated to negate itself with a corresponding rise in the cost of living. What is to be done about an expertly scientifically calculated contrapositive mobilization of the entire society? What can we do with the people who have gone through the authoritarian process and come out sick to the core? There will be a fight, end quote. And that's in some ways what Dr. King was even pointing to, and that's why he borrowed Kennedy's point about those who make peaceful revolution impossible, make violent revolution inevitable. He was becoming increasingly pushed by the Black power and Black liberation movements to become ever more militant and critical. That's why I think even to today, literally, as I think some false narratives around his conduct when he was alive are being leaked or spread as a form of mis and disinformation, largely to discount and discredit his critique of society and his critique of the economy and his critique of what would need to be done if there was ever to be something to meaningful to address the lack of equality facing Black people. So it's better to remove him in life and then posthumously rebrand him and the struggle that he represented, so that we can end up largely where we are today with the kind of critique he represented suppressed. So essentially what radicals and revolutionaries, as I understand them to be doing, have been saying is that there is an intentional outcome here that is necessary for this society to function as it is, with all of the benefits redounding to a ruling, mostly white, mostly male elite. To serve empire and the colonial relationships, this kind of hostility and ignorance must be fostered, which is why the work forthcoming as it is of future Dr. Brown and some of what she has unearthed in terms of the specifics of financial literacy, it really does have to be understood, even separate from its popular definition. In a similar fashion to buying power, financial literacy has to really be understood. Whenever you hear those words, and I would add, lately phrases like generational wealth, you should become immediately flags should go up. You should become skeptical, suspicious. Sus, exactly. Or as they used to say, check for make sure your wallet is still in your pants or whatever. Because somebody's trying to run game, and because the point is, if poor people are not poor because they are financially illiterate, and as Erika and work that she references has pointed out, it's connected to notions of illiteracy, lack of education that support colonial exploitation and violence, to suggest that people who are illiterate either in a language or in a finance deserve the inequality that they suffer, as if wealth were created and accumulated and consolidated as it is today because people were financially literate and checking theirs as we're taught it means and managing their checkbooks and all this other kind of thing. This is not how wealth is ever created. This is not how wealth is maintained. And those in power know this quite well. So the radical approach has been, let's look at outcomes and not just so-called opportunity. And let's get to a situation where the world we have today, where, as is reported, 800 people are worth $6.2 trillion in this country. We would just, and as I've just come to say, summarizing all of the radicalism I've been introduced to, I shouldn't have to be financially literate. I shouldn't have to be any smarter. None of us should have to be any smarter or work any harder than we already do to have a better redistribution of that $6.2 trillion that has only been accumulated by 800 people in this country, which is just, should anger and frustrate, cause a fury among anyone who hears that. So stop telling us we're financially illiterate. Stop telling us that we don't understand how this system works, other than to explain how real financial literacy would explain how we are being exploited and what we need to do to get out of that relationship. That's what we should understand when we hear financial literacy. If that's not what's being taught, everything else is some sort of hustle to get you to justify the inequality that we experience and to be blamed for it.
Thank you. Yes, that makes a lot of sense about how financial literacy, if we took it to mean something useful, would actually look. And Erika, I know you struggle through this a lot on Brokish, and so I want to toss you the fun one, the what do we do one. But average Black family, $56,000 a year in income, and 40% of that goes to rent. Then you pay your utilities, your health, get the kids fed, all of that information, and now you got a little bit left. So what do we do? Are you saying we
Who got a
shouldn't?
little bit left though? Where are the people who have a little bit left?
So you got a little bit. Hey, you spend on your Netflix, okay? You splurge on your Chipotle, whatever it is, Chick-fil-A, whatever it may be. So, what would you say? I know y'all work through this a lot with Brokish. To people who are still trying to figure out what they can do with their disposable income to help the Black community. Because I know this myth preys on this fact that we are communal, as you said, and we want to do something. So no, some people are gonna be like, they're saying do nothing. And you're saying just give up. And that's clearly not what we're saying. So what do you want to do with that little bit of money if you have it? How do you approach that question? How are y'all struggling through that?
This question is really, really hard for me. And it's hard because we literally started the show and named it Brokish because Black people are broke. Like we just don't got it. Like we don't got it like that. And so, yes, do we have extra and what can we do with the extra? So if I'm being pushed in a corner and I have to give some tips, then I'll do that. But in my research, I'll just give maybe an example. So in my research, I'm talking to people about the perceptions of the benefits and promises of financial literacy. And there's this question I ask about financial freedom. So I ask people, what does financial freedom look like to you? And what's the number to get to your financial freedom? And overwhelmingly, and I'm only talking to Black people, overwhelmingly people, when they give a number, they're never giving a number just for themselves. They're giving a number for other people. They're never thinking about their financial freedom in a vacuum. They're thinking about their financial freedom within this idea of community. And even if that community is small on a family level, it's not usually just, very few people are just like, it's just me. They want to know, some people have said to me their level of financial freedom is billions of dollars because if they can't do anything for their community, then they're not going to be free, right? That's just how they're viewing it. So anyway, I said all of that to say that because I do believe that we inherently have this view on community, there are some things that we can do. But if I'm going to be very cliche and you're on the airplane, they're like, put your mask on first. Like, you got to have something for a rainy day because it's always raining. And so a lot of this is if you do got a little extra, you need to have a little extra so that you can help yourself when the rain comes inevitably. But outside of that, I'm happy to be in spaces with like Black Men Build, to be associated and part of Black Liberation Media. Like there are places where you can give your resources to people who are trying to help mobilize and bring people together, right? So I think that that's something that you can do. But honestly, I don't think that the white people are wrong when they say you need an emergency fund. I just don't, because there's always a damn emergency. And The other thing is, I think we kind of need to reframe our thinking of resources beyond just the money. So I come from like a Christian faith tradition. And also one of the things I noticed in my research is most of the people without me saying anything like that, most people have faith entangled with their views on money. Their faith, money for a lot of people is an expression of faith. But anyway, if I go back to some of the things that I was taught, that when you have things, they're not just for you, they're for other people. And so I have a house. So that means for me, when I have people who need help and need a place to stay, I offer a place to stay to people, right? And so it's not just about extra money that I have or extra money that we have, but it's about what do we have that other people can benefit from. And I don't want to take us away from money like money's not important, but it is, I think, bigger than that. So to make this very long story short, put on your mask first, have some money for the rainy day, invest in people who are investing in people. And also think about ways that you can offer what you do have to people who need that thing.
Thank you. That was excellent response. There's only one way out of this. We already know the struggle. There's no mystery there. It's 100 years of Malcolm X. So well, we continue that. And we have to build community. So I really appreciate that grounded answer. Because again, this is a hard question. And there's no easy way out. Just like there was no easy way we got brought into this. Moving on. I want to open the floor. So we've been talking for a while. We got about 20 or so minutes left. And we just want to let the audience ask their questions now. So I'm going to open it up for Q&A. We'll do that until the last 3 minutes, have some closing announcements, key takeaways, and another offering. So opening up the floor for Q&A. I know my comrades are in the chat. So raise your hand if you want to come up and ask the question. If not, I'll also look through the chat for questions I could bring. And Lamar, if you want to write it down, because it was solid advice, we are going to upload this. Black Men Build has a YouTube channel where we put up our Theory Thursdays. Definitely check it out. It'll probably be up tomorrow. All right, I see. I hope I don't mispronounce the name. Salimata.
Yep, you said it perfectly.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Yes. This is a question for Erica. I want to know if she can expand on when she said that a lot of people's money habits are intertwined with their faith and financial tips for Black women.
So again, when I'm talking to people about money, I'm not asking them about their faith, their religion, because it was something that just came up. You know, as a researcher, sometimes things just come up. And what that looked like is often people talk about this idea of being a good steward. And so they, when I sort of lean into, well, what does it mean to be a good steward? How did you come to that? Overwhelmingly, they talk about the fact that their faith causes them to do that. And so whether it's the idea of tithing or it's the idea of offering, that's something that they just have sort of built in. And so I think like the notion of, you know, there have been studies on people who are more generous, and certainly poor people are more generous, Black people are more generous, right? And I think that comes out of that tradition of giving, tithing, and also when you're living in community when nobody has anything, y'all are always sharing things, right? So I think that's just a part of how it happened. And again, I don't try to give money tips, honestly, because for me, I don't really want to focus on the individual, but I think that there are just some solid things you can do. Like, I think a budget is a good idea, but there was this show I used to watch. I can't remember the name of the show, but it was Kerry Washington, and it was that white one, Reese Witherspoon, I think what it was. And so one time Kerry said on the show, I'll never forget, she was like, you didn't make good choices, you had good choices. And that's really what it is with money, right? Like, it's easy to budget when you have extra. I'm great with my budget every month because I just get a little bit more out. Like, that's easy to do. But when you ain't got extra, like, you can't do that. So I just want us honestly to focus on the collective more than the individual. Keep yourself safe, have an emergency fund, and if you can, plan for your retirement. God help you if you can get your children to college with all the things that are going on now. Like, honestly.
Thank you for that. I think you're thinking of little fires everywhere.
Yes. So you
Yeah,
saw it.
yeah, unfortunately. And I'll, I'll add, yeah, I grew up in the faith tradition as well. Matthew 6:33, seek ye first, all these things will be added unto you. There's a whole thing about prosperity gospel in the Creflo Dollar era that we can talk about with the church and people's work.
Uh-oh.
But we don't got
Office
time.
hours.
I
Office hours.
see Timeless. Timeless, I see you, and then Kofi. I'm gonna call on you next.
Greetings, everyone. Give thanks. I was wondering for any of the panelists and speakers, um, in this time of possibly ripening times, these times that are ripening for revolution, that more people divesting from the status quo mainstream body politic and looking to alternatives. Do you think that you're seeing an uptick, and is it sort of necessary that there will be more Black faces and faces of color and different folks representing insurgent ideas, deploying these kinds of insurgencies? And are you seeing a lot more of that? And secondly, second part is, what do you all think is a cogent and clear path towards economic development for our people? Give thanks.
So just quickly, I think, and I should study this because I've been tacitly watching it since the COVID pandemic, but where I felt like there was more, where to your point, there was a lot more criticism of the economic system occurring as people started to see what was happening with the shutdowns and and then money being created out of nothing for the ruling elite and all of that. People, all of this stuff. But I feel like I'm confident, without having done the work, I'll admit that there's been an uptick in the kinds of propaganda that would encourage those responses to go towards the right and the conservative. There's been, I think, an increase in the Black capitalist narrative. There's been increased support to media spaces and podcasts that promote entrepreneurial solutions and business solutions with increased regularity, and I feel like more encouragement for us to find Black celebrity and political and business positions taken up, so that when people start to raise questions about what's going on, they don't have anywhere to go for the correct and accurate analysis. I think that's playing out in electoral politics as well. What was the second part of the question, real quick? I'm trying to just be quick.
What we do economically.
Oh, right. Economic. I don't think there is any there. I'm not. If there is a pathway to economic power for Black people in this country, in this economy, I'm not aware of it. I've not found it, and I've not found a good argument suggesting it can happen for the collective. There will increasingly, maybe relatively speaking, be a handful that become relatively successful, but that's going to be about it. And the wealth of the community is headed to zero by all indicators of people who seem to be measuring this stuff. So I think that's sort of a point I'm making about the first half, that the conditions are ripening for revolution, and that's why we're seeing an increase in propaganda discouraging that.
And if I could just say, what we do economically, I'm always ill suited for this conversation because I don't think I have the radical imagination for it. So I have a friend who wrote a book recently about Malcolm X, and he's talking about Malcolm X's political program. And so the idea of people organizing wherever you are in the diaspora, right? So that would be here, that would be in Africa. Ultimately, I guess, sort of rehoming ourselves there. But my fear is just white people always come after the stuff. Like they always come after us and always come after the stuff. And so I don't have the right imagination for what it takes, but it definitely can't be this system, right? So we have to start anew, because I just don't know how we can do it without starting anew.
St. James, is that hand for a question or a comment?
I want to respond to the question, if I may. Yeah, I have a crazy radical imagination. Yeah, we see the means of production. Realistic, currently, join a union, join a radical Black organization, and support labor movements. The Fight for 15 movement was what, 10 years ago, damn near? At this point, $15 an hour is not enough as a living wage. It's just not. But that's what we can currently do as a people economically. We can join labor movements and push for a living wage based on current material conditions in whatever city you're in.
Appreciate that. I was going to say we did talk about the source of Black power is labor. So that is definitely one avenue we can pursue. Also, just going to shout out our study of Malcolm X. Check out our Malcolm X study guide. Jared submitted some edits, so we're going to relaunch that soon. But we have some principles for action. We studied Malcolm's OAU program, reorientation, restoration, education. There are some tangible things right there that we are trying to do and that we need to get better on, So there are some steps along the whole process of the struggle that we need to rebuild. And I would definitely recommend those. All right, I'm gonna go Kofi. I believe Kofi, Amadou, and James. And I think if that brings us to time, so be it. If not, there might be another offering. So Kofi, you up, Amadou, and then James.
Okay, so I understand that financial literacy is not a solution to, let's say, Black poverty in general, but I am still, and I agree with this stance as it has been largely in my experience, but how do I, like, can you give me an example of, like, I just wish I had a clearer example of why this is and how like an example that I can take to somebody else in my community that may not be as intellectual as I am, or might be more intellectual, or have a different type of intellect, and explain it to him. Like, for me, make it simple.
So the only thing that I can say is that financial literacy. So first of all, let me take two steps back. There is no agreed upon definition of financial literacy. So oftentimes we don't even know what we're talking about. So if you look at like the OECD, if you look at that President's Advisory Council, if you look at all the people who define financial literacy, there is not one definition. So it can be whatever you want it to be. And we've seen that in the way that people deal with financial literacy on the internet and in podcasts and everywhere else. But if we assume that financial literacy is this idea of managing your money well, whatever that looks like, it looks like that for you. So I think in terms of helping people to understand is that our freedom doesn't come from us individually. And that's why financial freedom cannot free us. Financial literacy cannot free us, right? So if I am going to do this individual thing of looking at my budget and seeing if I have extra so I can have a savings fund, I can have emergency fund, I can prepare for retirement. That's great for me. That's not great for everybody else. And so we can't have the freedom of Black people collectively with individual efforts. That's just not how it's going to work. And so that's why financial literacy is good for you. It's not bad. It's, again, I do all the things. I have somebody help me with my money. All the things. But that's for me. But I care about you. And so if we both gonna get free, this thing can't get us free.
Can I just add, simply because I have the privilege of seeing some of future Dr. Brown's unpublished work, which is thorough and excellent. And what just to, and because I've just literally have it right in front of me, when you read all of the various ways it's defined, there seems to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Erika, but there seems to be a through line. So if I were asked the question, what does financial literacy mean? I would say that however you see it defined, all of it is meant to say that the poverty you experience is your fault and based on your bad decisions. And that is the lie. And so it's to Erica's point, it is fine if you want to say, look, save a couple of dollars, prepare for this, don't buy that when you could buy, you could do all of those things. That's wonderful, as long as an addendum, an added line is included that this is not why you're poor and this is not going to make you rich. So I just wanted to add that quick point.
Thank you. Kofi, just real quick, we started the question just back to the start. What are the problems this person's trying to solve at the end of the day, right? Because I had a youngin who was into crypto, and I let him do that. I bought him a class. I know some people who trade. I put him in contact with that, and real quickly, he realized, that shit is not going to work. We had the brother from Dallas who tried to start a business, and noticed the banks were stopping. So Black people have been trying this. we're going to keep trying. It's just going to keep happening. We all, as individuals, have responsibilities, but at the end of the day, it's a collective problem. And thank you for your question. Amadou, you're up next. Amadou, I'm going to pass it to James if you're not here. All right, James.
Is that me?
That's you, James Mack.
Okay, perfect. One of the things I was wondering, because we're talking about financial literacy and the ways to how we can better ourselves or ways to move through this kind of system, how much have we looked at maybe divesting from the American system and saying maybe my dollar goes further in a country like Ghana or a country like Nigeria or somewhere else where we can maybe take our money and maybe it's not feasible to live a good life. I know I put up in the chat the idea that a Chinese worker may make less than you, but his dollar goes further in his country and buys more products than you. So is it maybe an illusion for us to think that we're ever going to be able to use the American dollar to buy ourselves the sustainable lifestyle that we're looking for?
So I'll just probably a quick take on this. When I understand the desire, or I think I understand the desire inherent in your question in terms of are there places where we can go and maybe have healthier, happier, more enriched lives? And I fear like what can happen is sometimes we do that and we go to places and then we act like colonizers. And I just think that that's not a healthy thing to do either. And so unfortunately, I'm like, I'm here, and so I feel like I want to try to abolish this thing and start a new thing right here, and everywhere else. But I don't necessarily want to go somewhere else with either my dollars or to try to do a thing over there that I think could ultimately be harmful to people. Because I've seen it happen and it just doesn't, when I've seen it happen, it doesn't look good. Not that it can't, but I just don't like how it sometimes smells.
I want to say thank you for that because that is such a fantastic point. And in my own thought process, that is something that I overlooked in that question. Thank you. That was brilliant.
Well, we
not to walk it back from the brilliance, but just to say quickly, having the privilege of having been all over the place, you're not going to leave here broke and go somewhere else and be rich. So whatever the exchange rate is not going to turn a poor person into a rich person just by transplanting from Brooklyn to Ghana or from Brooklyn to Accra or something like that. So that's part of the mythology here. And then to Erica's point, we end up going there and you just end up feeding into an already colonial system that's oppressing people over there to the extent that you're not at the bottom yourself. And by the way, the reverse is also true that so-called legal migrants, often from the African diaspora, are coming often from a privileged base with privileges and access that most Black Americans don't have in reverse, and that most people from their home countries don't have themselves. So we're not often dealing with one another on an accurate, honest, basis. So that's part of what all of this mythology is meant to do, keep us operating and engaging one another on mythology and fantasy.
Brandon, if you could bring back up the slides so we can close out. Thank y'all for that answer. Please revisit Malcolm. We gonna keep saying it. A lot of answers to these questions come there. When was Ghana most powerful? What are we here to do? Power. When was King visiting Ghana? That was when Nkrumah was in power, right? So when we had socialist Pan-African government, uh, or some sort of national control of our own resources. So it was Ghana in the past. Can you go to Burkina Faso now? Probably not, right? So it's about where you can go, the freedom to actually exchange and how we build power. You said China. China had a socialist communist revolution. And that's what we quoted Malcolm talking about when they got their nuclear weapon and cleared out their Uncle Tom. So we got to be clear about how people were even in a position to do this. I want to close out key takeaways. You saw these keys throughout the presentation. We just want you to remember them and try and apply them to any future financial literacy discussions. So first and foremost, Black radical thought emphasizes the why while teaching people the how. Black conservative thought emphasizes the how while suppressing the why. I see two hands that didn't get to ask questions. Would y'all be comfortable coming off mute to read these last two to close us out? William, would you be comfortable reading this middle key, this pink key right here? I really appreciate it.
Let's see. I think I'm off mute. It says it's helpful to look at our history through periods and examine the most common modal experiences of Black working people during those periods. This will reveal shared features and challenges shaping our community. And I want to say one other thing. A house divided cannot stand. And I'm a pastor and I'm a wartime vet. A house divided cannot stand when the enemy used division to destroy other people.
Thank you. That is a key takeaway as well. That's why we start with our values, so we stay united. And I'm going to just close it out. Myth and propaganda shape our reality. We must develop critical, radical, as in getting to the root, thinking and methods for sharing the truth with each other, like we tried to do tonight. So those are our takeaways. Want to go next slide, please, to close this out. Please become a member, a national member, and then if you have a hub in your city, we have 8, and we're building more. Please get plugged in locally. This is the national membership process, blackmen.build/membership, so you can get more tapped in with our work. Next slide, please. So we encourage national membership. We encourage you to sign our values pledge. And if you want to support this work financially, right, please make a donation at the link below. Got 2 more slides. Again, we like to say peace if you're willing to fight for it. Fred Hampton used to say, we hope you have a great night, but we have a unique offering tonight. One more slide, Brent. Oh, again, donate to the organization. And we're having office hours. It's a new segment.
Please donate to the organization.
Yes, St. James, thank you. Please donate to the organization. We need it. That's, call the tithe. Next office hours. Join us. We're going to continue this conversation for 30 minutes. I don't know if Jared and Erica can stick around, but we want to have some time for y'all to continue the conversation, keep asking questions, share stories, resources, thoughts. So we'll keep it open, but the recording's over, Theory Thursday.